On this week's Vaticano, Pope Francis arrives in Ecuador, first stop of his trip to Latin America. Renewal of the Spirit gathers in Rome and meets with Pope Francis along with a special event, a concert in St. Peter's Square. This Italian rock group brings a message of peace against violence through their music. A conference in Rome focuses on the human person in the center of the protection of the environment, and a film imagines what the last days of the Virgin Mary might have looked like. All this and more now on Vaticano. Pope Francis has arrived in his native continent, Latin America. The Pope left on Sunday morning with his Alitalia flight 330 heading to the first country of his voyage, Ecuador. At 3 p.m. local time, he arrived punctually at the airport Mariscal Sucre, where he was warmly received by the locals. President Rafael Correa greeted Pope Francis with an affectionate hug. They jumped straight into cordial conversation. After a speech by President Correa in which he voiced his joy about Pope Francis's visit and also mentioned the encyclical and the importance of politicians working together for the common good, Pope Francis gave a speech to the gathered crowd.
Amigos todos, comienzo con ilusión.
Dear friends, I begin my visit filled with excitement and hope for the days ahead. In Ecuador is the point closest to outer space. It is the peak of Chimborazo, which for that reason is called the place closest to the sun, the moon and the stars. We Christians identify with the sun and the moon with the Church, the community of the faithful. No one save Jesus Christ possesses his or her own light. May the coming days make all of us ever more clearly aware of how close is the sun which dawns upon us from on high. May each of us be a true reflection of his light and his love.
El sol que nace de lo alto, y que seamos reflejos de su luz y de su amor.
Subsequently, Francis was greeted by the bishops of the country. As a sign of universality of the gospel message, also a senior citizen and a family exchanged words with the pontiff. The Pope left the airport to continue to the Apostolic Nunciature to rest for the next day from his 13-hour flight. The last Pope to visit Ecuador was St. John Paul II in 1985.
A whole nation in expectation. Pope Francis arrives in Ecuador. This woman has worked in Ecuador and shares the joy of her people on the eve of the pontiff's arrival.
It
is truly an immense joy, really. It is not just a joy for Ecuador, Bolivia, and Paraguay, where he will visit, but for the whole Latin American continent. It is the first apostolic visit after World Youth Day in Brazil. But as an apostolic journey, it's the first one. It's the first journey to the end of the world, right?
Pope Francis went to the periphery of the world to encounter the people who live in an existential periphery to bring them the joy of the gospel.
The Holy Father speaks to us. He invites us all to go to the peripheries, not just geographically, but also existentially, right? He does this by going to this small land. And I don't think it's by chance that he begins his first voyage to Latin America with Ecuador. Possibly, yes. But it is also a nice sign, where he invites everyone to come out, to reach out and hug the people. He will embrace all mankind, the pain and suffering of all humanity, from this periphery. The visit of the Holy Father is truly a sign of hope. The hope of the gospel, is it not? It is not worldly optimism. It will be a grace for each of those households, families, and so on. Open your heart, open your doors. That is even in our religious belief, right? It is like Christ. The Pope, as the vicar of Christ in his life, does good. He is intended to do good to all, to give the embrace of the Father's mercy to all. So for me, I am really very happy that so many people who are struggling with the difficulties of life can receive this grace, this embrace, this joy of knowing Him, They are not the joys of this world, as the Holy Father always says, but the joy of the gospel, the joy that you have found Christ in your life, and when you reach a higher dimension in your life.
Upon his arrival in Ecuador, city officials said 1 million visitors had traveled to Guayaquil to see the Pope.
Renewal in the Spirit organized a concert in Rome on June 3rd. It was part of the 38th national convocation of the group with Pope Francis, and thousands participated in St. Peter's Square. The theme was Voices in Prayer for a Spiritual Ecumenism.
Piazza San Pietro è la madre di tutte le piazze.
St. Peter's Square is the mother of all squares, and it is the place where it is important to recall the faith that promotes unity and that gives strength to the least important people, as Pope Francis continually reminds us. It is impressive to think that the least ones are also the Christians. The desire for unity expresses this poverty that exists. We are dramatically divided. To speak about spiritual ecumenism means to find ways of reconciliation amongst ourselves.
Trovare vie di riconciliazione fra di noi.
As a special gift to the Pope, a concert took place with famous Italian singer Andrea Bocelli.
Abbiamo pensato di fare un regalo a Papa Francesco.
So we have thought of making a present to Pope Francis. He urges us to work for ecumenism, and therefore we have called a lot of friends from all over the world to make him feel the warmth and the affection of this unity with him. Just like concentric circles, this unity will spread in all the world, and others will see in this initiative, with this prayer, that this ecumenical concert will be possibility to be together and to show what the faith can generate.
E per far vedere che cosa la fede può generare.
Pope Francis himself was present. He made it before his departure to Ecuador and emphasized the importance of ecumenism.
This current of grace goes through all Christian confessions. All of us Christians believe in Christ. The unity is most of all a unity of prayer. Work for unity of Christians begins with prayer. Let us pray together. There is also the unity of blood, of martyrs, that makes us one today. There is the ecumenism of blood. We know that those who hate Jesus Christ and kill Christians don't ask before they murder them, "Are you Lutheran or Orthodox, Evangelical, Baptist or Methodist?" No, they say, "You are Christian," and cut their head off. They do not mix up that there is a common root, that the life of all of us is a call to Jesus Christ, and that the Spirit leads us to unity. Those who hate Jesus Christ, that are led by evil, do not err. They know why they kill us, without making questions.
Senza fare domande.
The meeting continued on the following Saturday with a grand gathering in the Olympic Stadium of Rome. Organizers wanted to give a voice to all suffering Christians around the globe.
C'è tanto rumore intorno.
There is a lot of noise around those events. The politicians are agitated, the culture is agitated, and the people suffer. The people have no voice. The title of this event is Voice in Prayer, because we want to give voice to the least. We want to give a voice to those who cannot forget the right to life, the life in a house, the life in a family, the life with one's dear ones, the right to confess a faith and to confess it freely. This is one of the only squares in the world where you can confess your faith freely.
In cui è possibile dire la fede pubblicamente.
The roots of Renewal in the Spirit reach back to the U.S., where in January 1967 in Pittsburgh, Catholic University students started to merge Pentecostal spirit with their faith to spread the joy of the gospel worldwide. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI received 2 doctorates honoris causa, honorary titles, on Saturday from the Pontifical John Paul II University of Krakow and the Krakow Academy of Music. The motivation to issue these titles was his great respect for the musical tradition of the Church and sensitivity to the music of faith, as well as his constant insistence on the didactic importance of the Via Pulchritudinis, the way of beauty. Representatives of the universities as well as cardinals, among them Cardinal Stanislav Dziwisz, were present for the ceremony in the Vatican. Pope Benedict then left for his first voyage after retiring, Castel Gandolfo, where he will spend the summer. Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
Founded in 1997, the Italian rock band The Sun released a new album. This new CD is loaded with Christian messages. The title is Open Heart. But why?
Essere a cuore aperto è un modo di vivere.
Having an open heart is a way of life which distinguishes that person who has an open and compassionate relation with all of reality that is around them from the others. A friendly relation, not just with one's neighbor and one's close ones, but with the other in its most general sense, with everybody, and also with all of creation.
Senso lato, cioè tutti, tutta l'umanità, ma ancora di più tutta la creazione.
One of the songs, in particular, will give you the chills. It deals with the violence in Iraq.
Se parlo, mi imbatto in un punto oscuro che temo e non vedo alcun futuro. Io vivo, però attorno è un inferno, un massacro continuo, nel nome di un qualche Dio. Case in fiamme, morti appesi.
Primo brano estratto da Cuore Aperto.
The first song of this album is called The Houses of Mosul and is very special. It is dedicated to the murder of Professor Mor Mehut al-Hasali, who was a professor of Quranic law at the University of Mosul in Iraq. This man showed that he loved the truth more than his life. He chose to say in front of his students openly that which is going on in Mosul, that which the Muslims of the Caliphate are doing to the Christians and to other religious minorities has nothing to do with love, with God, or with their law. He, as a Muslim, has defended those of other religions too. The song was very intense in writing and also in promotion, since picking a topic like that went against all logic of promotion of mainstream music. But the Lord calls us to make courageous choices. After weeks, this choice was finally given a prize, since there's a lot of people who expect that music should transmit some meaning.
Persone che aspettano che la musica dica finalmente qualcosa.
The band experienced a conversion and found their faith together, affecting their entire lives, including their songwriting.
L'incontro con Cristo è qualcosa.
The encounter with Christ is something that changes our life very profoundly. Step by step, year after year, it is a passage. You have asked how my professional life has changed, but I would say it changes your whole life. It changes your whole life and therefore also your professional life. The way how I write, the way how I use my personal talents, the way of work and how to relate to people. For us, the music became a special and unique means to gather people and to communicate these values to them, but also to share with our contemporaries something that we have lived through and that gave us a lot. This joy is very powerful and becomes more powerful when it is shared.
È una cosa potentissima e lo è ancora di più quando viene condivisa.
The band enjoys applause from fans, but they themselves are fans of someone else, Pope Francis. With their music, they want to communicate the gospel message as he does.
Papa Francesco abbiamo avuto l'onore.
Pope Francis, we had the honor, the pleasure and the luck to meet in multiple occasions actually. In Rio de Janeiro, in Assisi and here in Rome. We have not given him our newest CD, but the great thing is not only that we met him, but that there is a true communion. Also through the new encyclical that the Pope has published 10 days ago. It is incredible to see that the new CD and the new encyclical have actually a lot in common. It is beautiful, because the Spirit uses different languages to say the same thing. This Pope gives a voice to so many people, and most importantly gives a voice to those who do not have a voice in the media. Many people, also those that do not believe, see him as the only political leader, and it is good to see that. He is the only one that says certain things. Pope Francis is in this moment. The new CD can be purchased from their website, and follow them on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. The recent publication of Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si continues to create ripples in the whole world. In Rome, a conference was held with top-notch specialists invited to shed further light on the environmental issues. People and Planet First, the imperative to change course, was the title of the two-day symposium that was held at Rome's Augustinianum. Specialists from all continents contributed to Pope Francis's call to save the planet, always keeping in mind that the human person is at the center.
This is a very, very important event. It is a moment to make known and deepen the knowledge of Laudato Si. The encyclical is important because it touches upon the fundamental topics of our present and our future. I'm happy to be here and to help with this task. Christians together can give a much more efficient answer. The great problem of today of humanity is that they are so divided, or that they only act in their own interest.
The UN's General Secretary Envoy for Climate Change was also present. She gave some insight on how the encyclical has been received internationally.
I've already seen the influence that the encyclical is having on UN negotiators, because I was at the meeting in New York on the 29th of June, brought together by the President of the General Assembly, and every minister there spoke very positively about the encyclical. And I think it has increased both an urgency and a more holistic way of thinking about our world. And I was happy to look at the pathways to our common home based on the encyclical, looking at our common home, looking at the responsibility that we have, and looking at the pathways, because it's a very rich document. It's a very holistic document, and I think it is very important for our world.
One of the organizers of the conference was CIDSE, an international alliance of Catholic development agencies.
The overall objective is to bring global justice about. And global justice means for us that people can live in dignity, that they can fulfill their rights, and that they also fulfill their duties in living in harmony with the nature, that we do not destroy our environment, that we understand that we are part of the environment. The Holy Father made a very interesting choice. He made the choice to publish the encyclical now. And that was on purpose. He wants to influence 3 international summits. The International Conference in Addis Ababa on financing development and financing climate. That means financing, for example, renewable energies. Secondly, he wants to influence the International Summit in New York, where he will personally go to speak at the United Nations about future sustainable development goals, that all countries worldwide will agree on a new pathway towards sustainable development. And thirdly, I think the encyclical will have a fundamental impact on the climate negotiations.
And this was just one of many events that Pope Francis has triggered with his document. A new biblical film shot in Hollywood. Follow Mary of Nazareth in her last earthly days as she helps the fractious early church regain its original encounter with the Lord.
Full of Grace is an exploration of the last days of Mary of Nazareth's earthly life. We know that she was assumed into heaven, but we also know that she lived a life on earth. This takes place 10 years after the resurrection. And we wanted to explore what was the Christian drama, the people who were trying to live the faith out in a particular place in the Middle East after Christ's resurrection. And so we developed this story to understand better what was the thread that united Mary and Peter's experience with ours today. We were really inspired by Pope Francis's words about this culture of encounter, that we are changed because we meet Christ. And the same thing happened to Mary, the same thing happened to Peter, and we wanted to understand with their humanity, because that's what I need to see, is how they responded to that.
The filming of Full of Grace began on October 27, 2014. The film uses authentic casting with many Middle Eastern actors in its principal character roles, but it was filmed in California.
We were the first biblical film to shoot in Los Angeles since the Ten Commandments. Most Bible films are shot here in Italy or in Morocco. So we found some really small but really effective set pieces in Los Angeles. The Bat Cave in Hollywood, right underneath the Hollywood sign we used as Pontus. We found a lake outside of Los Angeles that you would never know that it wasn't not the Sea of Galilee. But it was a really exciting process because we wanted to also, like with our casting, we wanted to find Middle Eastern actors.
While Scripture did not detail any of the final years of Mary's life, the film seeks to fill in the gaps by imagining what likely would have been. It impacted the cast themselves through parallels to modern life.
Living in Los Angeles, it's a difficult place. It's not easy to understand what I'm living for. So through this story, we really discovered something interesting with the drama that Peter was living, especially because he was a simple man. He wasn't a philosopher. He wasn't an orator. He was a fisherman. And he, despite all his shortcomings, Christ asked him to follow him. And so the drama that Peter was living is also the drama that all of us, and me in particular, were living too. So it was the film has been a great help, a great adventure.
Nothing more than a grain of sand.
What did you learn in making the film?
We have to sometimes follow, like Peter in our movie. At the end of the movie, Mary, he's heavy with the burden of leading this church, and Mary helps him understand that it is not him who's leading, but it's him who's following Christ, even if he's sometimes not as energetic and happy and full of life, you know, the burdens of life. So that character of Peter was a great help to me to understand, because then I understand that it's possible to live Christianity if it isn't about being perfect, but it's about putting all of myself into it and being changed by Christ. That's something I can do.
I